The darkness, a name whispered, never spoken aloud. A huddle of houses swallowed by the woods. The forest was a living thing, a beast of shadows and whispers. The townsfolk lived in fear. They rarely ventured out after dark. The sun dipped below the tree line. Darkness seeped in like poison. Shadows stretched, twisting familiar shapes into monstrous silhouettes. Fear choked the air, thick and suffocating. The darkness held its breath. Nightfall brought a silence so profound it was deafening. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful cry. It spoke of ancient secrets, of things best left undisturbed. Within their homes, the townsfolk huddled, praying for the safety of daylight. Taka. They knew him by the black mask he wore. It hid his features, but not his eyes. They were kind, filled with a quiet strength. He was their protector, the only one who dared to face the night. Every night, Taka would vanish into the forest. He moved like a phantom, his dark cloak blending with the shadows. He was searching for something, they whispered. Something lost, or something forgotten. Some said he was cursed. Others, that he was touched by the forest's magic. They spoke in hushed voices when he was near, a mixture of fear and reverence in their eyes. Taka never spoke of his nightly excursions. He bore the weight of their fear and the secrets of the night on his masked face. The night was moonless, the air thick with mist. Taka ventured deeper than usual, drawn by an unseen force. A voice echoed through the trees, faint yet insistent. It called his name. Taka stopped, his hand hovering over the hilt of his sword. The voice was familiar, yet he couldn't place it. It seemed to slither through the darkness, wrapping around him like a serpent. He pressed on, his boots sinking into the soft earth. The trees grew closer, their branches intertwining overhead, blocking out the last vestiges of light. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of his resolve. Still, the voice called to him. He had to find it. Section 4. Reflections of Dread. An old house stood in a clearing, shrouded in an unnatural silence. The air around it was thick with an eerie stillness, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. It was a skeletal structure, its windows like empty eyes staring out at him. The walls, once painted with vibrant colours, were now faded and peeling, revealing the bare bones of the house. The voice, he realised, was coming from inside. It was a whisper, barely audible, yet it sent chills down his spine. Taka pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The door groaned in protest, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Dust swirled in the air, thick and suffocating. Each step he took stirred up more, making it hard to breathe. Cobwebs draped the room like macabre tapestries. They hung from the ceiling and walls, creating a maze of silken threads. He could feel the weight of forgotten memories pressing down on him. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect. A mirror hung on the far wall, its surface dull and tarnished. It seemed out of place, almost as if it was waiting for him. As Taka approached, he saw a face reflected back at him. It wasn't his own. The reflection seemed to move on its own, independent of his actions. The face was gaunt, with eyes that burned like hot coals. They seemed to pierce through him, seeing into the depths of his soul. Its lips were stretched into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of pointed teeth. The smile was unnaturally wide, almost as if it was mocking him. Terror, raw and consuming, seized Taka. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled back, his hand flying to his mask. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in, suffocating him with their oppressive presence. Section 5. The Taint Within. Taka couldn't shake the image from his mind. The face in the mirror, the eyes, the teeth. It had burrowed under his skin, a seed of darkness taking root. He felt a change within himself, a growing unease. His reflection in the river no longer brought him comfort. His features seemed sharper, his eyes colder. His skin had taken on an unnatural pallor, a sickly grey. Fear, once a distant companion, now clung to him like a shroud. He tried to convince himself it was just his imagination, the darkness playing tricks on his mind. But deep down he knew the truth. The face in the mirror was him, or at least it was becoming him. Section 6. A Town Transformed. The next morning, Taka woke with a start. Something was different. The air felt heavier and an eerie silence filled the room. He reached up to adjust his mask and found it had changed. The familiar comfort it once provided was gone. It was colder, heavier, and the once smooth surface was now rough and uneven. It felt foreign, almost hostile. He stumbled outside, a sense of dread growing in his gut. The world outside mirrored his unease. The town, once a beacon of warmth, even in the encroaching darkness, now seemed different. Shadows loomed larger, and the light seemed to struggle against the dark. The colors were muted, the air stagnant. It was as if the life had been drained from everything around him. The houses, once welcoming, now seemed to sag under an invisible weight. They looked tired, worn out by an unseen force. The townsfolk, he noticed, were different too. Their usual cheerfulness was replaced by a palpable anxiety. Their faces were drawn, their eyes filled with a nameless fear. It was as if they had seen something they couldn't unsee. They moved like spectres, their laughter replaced by a heavy silence. The once vibrant community now felt like a ghost town. The darkness, he realized, had seeped beyond the forest's edge. It was no longer contained. Spreading its tendrils into the heart of the town, it had taken root in his town, in his people. The transformation was complete, and Taka knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Section 7. The darkness consumes all. Taka stood in the town square, a cold wind whipping at his cloak. The once vibrant heart of the town now felt like a desolate wasteland, echoing with the whispers of the past. His reflection stared back at him from a puddle of rainwater, twisted and grotesque. The water rippled, distorting his features even further, making him look like a stranger to himself. He no longer recognized himself. The man he once was had been replaced by a shadow of fear and regret. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow. Every decision, every step he had taken had led him to this moment of despair. The face in the mirror, the transformation of the town, it was all his fault. The darkness had seeped into every corner, every crevice, leaving nothing untouched. He had brought the darkness back with him from the forest. It was a place of ancient evils, a place where light dared not tread. It had latched onto his fear, his doubt, and used him as a vessel. The shadows had found a way to manifest through him, feeding on his insecurities. He was no longer their protector. The townspeople had once looked to him for safety, but now they saw only a harbinger of doom. He was the harbinger of their destruction. The weight of this realization pressed down on him, almost suffocating in its intensity. The darkness had consumed him, and now it would consume them all. It spread like a plague, relentless and unforgiving. He looked up at the forest that loomed over the town, its branches swaying like skeletal fingers. The forest seemed to mock him, a constant reminder of his failure. He had gone into the darkness searching for something, and what he found was his own demise. The darkness had won. It had taken everything from him, leaving only a hollow shell of the man he once was.